Hello everyone. Wait. Hello everyone and welcome to my new series. Did you hear that? Weird. Yes, if you are familiar with Chris's Survival Horror Quest, you might be wondering if this is a ripoff or something like that. No, it is not a ripoff, but it is very based on it. Unfortunately, that website seems to be gone and I really miss that list, the website in general. And I decided that, well, I could do my own and delve into the horror genre a little bit more. Especially since, I've been making horror games. I'm currently working on a horror game. It would be good for inspiration and other things. I thought it was a good idea, so here we are. If you don't know what Chris's Survival Horror Quest was, well, it was a website made by Chris Pruitt. Probably saying that name wrong. Who's currently working as Director of Content Ecosystem at Oculus. It was a very comprehensive list of every survival horror game, and Chris would play them and rate them accordingly if they were worth to play for the horror buff or not. I was a really big fan of the website and I found a lot of really cool games in it. You can still access archived versions of the website, but it's not the same thing. It's not being continued anymore, so I thought, hey, just gonna do it. The website's URL now leads you to Chris's blog, and it's still very interesting. He talks a lot about game design and stuff like that, and there's still some bits and pieces from the old website there, so if you're interested, go check it out, it's pretty cool. Definitely, lots of credits to him, because if it wasn't for his website, I don't know if I would be making the series right now, so yeah, thank you. I just hope I do at least a decent job compared to what he had once in that website. And with all that said, welcome to the first episode, where we will tackle 4 Atari 2600 games released between 1982 and 1983, which some people consider to be the very first survival horror games. Going forward, this series will focus on one game per episode, but since these games are kinda short experiences, I thought it would be a smart idea to put them all in one episode, and it makes this first episode a little bit special. And I will be doing this in chronological order, so if you go onto my website and click on Retro Horror Games Quest on the top bar, well, you can see the complete list, so you kind of know what episodes are coming next. I was wondering, should I keep the list hidden or not and just put the games as I make the videos? But I thought, hey, if I was looking for a horror game list, I would like to see the list, not just an incomplete list. So yeah, the whole list is there. If you have any suggestions for games you think that should be there and are not, well, you can comment here, you can comment on my website, you can send me an email. You can find that on the website as well, and let me know and I'll check it out. But you should know that it focuses more on psychological horror and atmosphere than actual action horror. Although there are a few exceptions, but those are more for personal reasons or because they are special games for the genre. After talking about each game, I will give it my score of my personal enjoyment of the game, and then I'll recommend it to the horror buff or not, with which I call the required play score. All of that can be found on the website as well, but at the end of the video, I will show it to you, and then you decide yourself. Do you want to play it? Do you not? Let me know. Let me know if you've played it, what you think of it, because, hey, that's what you're here for. And why not make videos of them too? Send them to me. I want to see all of them. And now, without further ado, I give you the first game. Haunted House was written by James Andreasen, I hope I am saying that name correctly, and published by Atari in February 1982. I wasn't even born yet. As expected, the graphics of the game are very abstract and simplistic due to the technology at the time, but hear me out, Haunted House is actually a fun game. I was honestly surprised as I did not expect to like it as much as I did. It's not that I dislike old games, it's just that usually games released before the NES seem to fail to hold my attention. I don't know why, but that's just how it's always been for me. A pair of floating eyes represent your character. That's already horror material. You must explore this haunted mansion located in the town of Spirit Bay, which was owned by some guy named Zachary Graves, who died and retrieved the 3 pieces of an urn. What this urn is for and why you need it, it is entirely unknown to me, but according to legend, it contains some magical abilities. Graves' mansion has 3 floors and a basement, and the layout doesn't really change across the 9 levels, which vary in difficulty.
What does change, however, is which doors are locked and unlocked, among other things, but we will get to that soon. While traversing the mansion, you must evade 3 types of enemies: a bat, a huge tarantula, and the ghost of Mr. Graves. Ghost Graves! You have no means to protect yourself from the start, but one of the items you can find inside is a scepter, which will turn you invincible. I hope I am saying that correctly again. Apart from the scepter, you may also find a key, which will let you unlock any doors. The catch here is that you may only hold one object at a time: the scepter, the key, or the urn, or the pieces of the urn. And you need that urn to leave from the ground floor of the mansion, which is an early example of everyone's favorite, the inventory management. As stated before, the layout of the mansion is always the same, so where is the challenge in that? Well, change to the second level and, yep. Well, you're in the dark now. All you can see on the screen is the pair of floating eyes that represent you. Press the fire button and you will light a match. Lighting matches lower your score and they burn briefly, so try to keep their use to a minimum. I got so used to the layout that I barely had any use for them to find my way around the mansion. After a while, it's pretty easy to find your way just by looking at the screen, but it's such a nice touch and an early example of the use of darkness and light sources in horror games. You do, however, need to turn them on in order to find items. If you don't, you just don't see anything, it's just a black screen. At later stages, the enemies do become a pain though. So many times I open the door just to be jumped by one of them. There's just no way to evade them sometimes. And if you get hit 9 times, it's game over. This is annoying in more ways than one, since when enemies hit you, the game is temporarily paused until they leave the screen. I guess that's a good thing since they cannot hit you again immediately, but it is also dull to have to wait. This moment is also accompanied by the sound and screen flashing of lightning. And boy, is it grating to the senses. In fact, most of the audio in this is... I was not expecting much in terms of sound considering the technology at the time, but the effects could have been toned way down. Every time you move, you hear this deep, clicky footsteps, which happen way too quickly and kind of hurt my ears if I'm playing using my bassy headphones. Apart from these and the lightning effects, when you get hit, the sound is not horrible per se. In fact, some of the audio is very important. When you use stairs in the mansion, the only way you know if you went upstairs or downstairs is through the audio. Heard a melody going high in pitch? You went upstairs. Is it lowering in pitch? Downstairs. It's an excellent addition, way better than displaying which floor you are in on the screen at all times, or even when changing floors. It's much more immersive, if you can call a game like this with, immersion. Door sounds are also important. The first stage where the lights are on has no doors, so you can move freely between each room. But after the first level, when in the dark, each room is separated by doors, and the sound they make is how you can tell if the door is locked or not. Well, that and your character stops moving, so that's kind of a given. Apart from this, there's an eerie melody, very reminiscent of old horror movies, that plays when you finally leave the mansion with the urn. And, wait a minute, that's just the Twilight Zone music.
You unlock this door with the key of imagination. Beyond it is another dimension. A dimension of sound. A dimension of sight.
Where this game really picks up, though, is at the later stages. Different doors are locked, the stairs could be anywhere, it's an enjoyable exploration puzzle. I always try to avoid the key here and hold the urn to try and memorize my way back to the exit. Yes, having the key, you can find the urn pieces faster, but you also can't hold both the urn and the key at the same time, so I quickly realized the key was working somewhat against me.
So yeah, that is Haunted Mansion. I'm seriously surprised by that game. I'm kinda glad I did this series because if it wasn't for it, I probably would never have played it, and I really enjoyed it, much more than what I was expecting. I give Haunted Mansion for the Atari 2600 2 stars out of 5, with a maybe horror fan required play score. Please remember that I am scoring these according to my own enjoyment and not the standards at the time or how they hold up nowadays. But the story is not over, no. A few years later, Haunted Mansion got an unofficial sequel titled Return to Haunted Halls for the Atari 2600.
Oof. Liking Haunted House made me expect more from this game than what it had in store for me. Maybe I should not have kept my hopes up, considering this was an unofficial sequel. Listen, I love adventure games as much as the next guy, if the next guy is a fan of adventure games. But one thing I despise in that genre of games is freaking obscure puzzles. And by that I mean puzzles where there's basically no clues to lead you in the right way, or those clues are buried so deep into places you would never think of looking, and when you finally find out what you were supposed to do, you just want to facepalm a crater into your face!
Okay, I'm calm now.
The creator of this mod created a manual that will lead you in the right direction. Yes, this is actually a mod for the Atari 2600 Classic Adventure. But as far as I know, the game did not ship with it, and I don't want to think about the nightmare it would have been to try to figure this game out without it. You can find a link to the manual on the screen and on the description below if you want to check it out for yourself. Also, I know 2005 is far off into the future in terms of the games that I am covering here, but while the mod was officially released in 2005, the game it is built on, Adventure, was released around 1980, so I'm gonna say it counts.
It counts. There, I said it. It counts. But I digress.
Return to Haunted House has you return to, our friend Mrs. Graves' mansion. Yes, this is a direct continuation of the first game. The story tells of a brave individual who managed to enter Graves' estate and recover the urn.
Hey, that was me in the previous game!
The urn sat as a trophy in this brave adventurer's shelf for over 2 decades, until it was spirited away. After this, residents of Spirit Bay started to tell of strange events occurring in Mr. Graves' mansion again. Rumor has it that Graves was buried in a crypt under his own house, which is likely and very, very pleasant, since his ghost was haunting us in the previous installment. To stop Graves' ghost once and for all, people decided to start breaking into the mansion again, find the crypt, and defile his body through post-mortem decapitation. They would then need to cast his head into the deep caverns near the estate.
Jesus Christ!
So yeah, here's how the game goes. I'm gonna try to get this all out in one big breath. If I die, please do tell of my tales and bravery and ghost fighting. First, you must grab the shovel, make your way into the graveyard, and grave rob all men's grave where the scepter lies, which cannot be retrieved just yet, so then you make your way through a labyrinthic basement while trying to avoid ghosts and freaking death itself to find a huge ass ladder in order to get to the scepter, which then you can use to kill Death Dead, and grab the key to the crypt where you can find Old Man's grave skull, which then you can bring back to his grave in order to finally beat the game!
Woof, that's a doozy.
I didn't manage to beat the game, not even in the first difficulty, due to what I would say is a bug, possibly an emulation bug, where I was not able to kill any enemies using the scepter. I even looked at videos of other people playing, and while I was doing the exact same thing, enemies would just not die in my game, which made the last goal basically impossible to accomplish. A later difficulty is the house is bigger, but considering I was not having much fun with this one, I just didn't explore much further. Yeah, as if it wasn't clear already, I did not enjoy this one. I never played Adventure, so I am not sure if the faults of this game lie in that game or not, considering that this is a mod of it. Well, let's start with the items, shall we? You have a big ladder, which is used to grab the scepter, more on that one later. A key, which is used to unlock the crypt holding Old Man's grave skull. A shovel, used to dig Old Man Grave's grave. Old Man Grave's skull, which you need to bring back to the grave to beat the game. And a weird magnetic glove that attracts items in the room. I didn't find much use for that one. I don't know what it's doing there. Maybe it's something from Adventure. So about that scepter, unlike the first game where it would turn you invincible, it actually lets you kill the enemies this time around. The way you do this is to touch enemies with it. The problem here was that even though I was touching them, it seemed to not do anything. And that's when I was able to touch them with it, because unlike every other footage I've seen of this game, whenever I entered the screen with enemies holding the scepter, they would just run away from the screen in less than 1 second. Not to mention that when you grab the items, they will stick to you in the direction that you grabbed them from, which is something I'm still not sure if I like or not, but it did have me think about which was the best way to pick them up. All this to say that, since I was not able to kill them with a scepter, making my way back to the grave with a skull was impossible with so many enemies. Which brings me to the AI, holy crap! The AI is all over the place, and every enemy is faster than you. This means that you can get killed almost instantly when entering another screen, or that you are unable to continue due to a stubborn enemy in the next screen. I guess if the scepter worked, this would have not frustrated me so much. I don't really blame the game for that, since it could have been an emulation problem. As for enemy types, we have Old Man Graves Ghost, Charon, aka Death itself, a White Ghost, and a Green Bat. There are no tarantulas this time around because the creator of this mod apparently hates spiders. Especially giant hairy ones. Old Man Graves Ghost looks like the Nyan Cat flashing multiple colors like a schizophrenic rainbow. The worst of the bunch is definitely Charon. That's a one-hit kill, baby. The idea for this game is solid, and it could have been so much more. I like the idea of having more areas to explode instead of just 4 identical floors of the first game, and I really like the idea of solving puzzles instead of just collecting items and evading enemies. Wait.
Wait. Was the first game the first Slender-like before Slender?
The map itself was okay, but the maze was a bit boring since you could only see like 5 pixels around you. Eventually I did memorize it, but it was not a fun process. I just wish there was more variety.
I know, I'm asking too much for a 2600 game, but the building blocks are all there. It probably could have been done, and well. I just realized I didn't actually mention audio that much, but to be honest, there's not much to say. It's pretty on par with the first game. I give Return to Haunted House for the Atari 2600 a 1 star out of 5, with a survival horror required play score of...
Helga, baby, damn no!
Alright, off the highs of Haunted House and the disappointment of Return to Haunted House, I proceeded cautiously to the third game, Ghost Manor. Yes, another haunted real estate. XONOX, I guess that's how you say the name, released Ghost Manor in 1983 for the Atari 2600 and the Commodore VIC-20. You can choose to play as the boy or as the girl, and whichever one you choose, your goal is to rescue the other one. This is very confusing considering you can toggle between each character at will, which will change the sprite of the character that is in the cell. It's really bizarre. To be fair, this might be another one of those emulation things. Maybe in the original game you were not able to toggle between them at will. In fact, some of the information I read leads me to believe that was the case. The story for this is very straightforward. Dracula kidnapped your friend, and you must save said friend. That's it. The exciting part here is that you have a time limit. The night is falling, and you must save your friend before dawn. And it seems the whole night goes by in 5 minutes.
Please don't quote me on this, I did not time it.
To save your friend, you must traverse through 5 screens. In the first screen, you are in a graveyard, and a friendly rainbow ghost floats around. The objective here is to poke the ghost, yes, you heard that right, with your hands to get ammo, or spears as the manual calls them, which will be used on the next screen. You are not crazy, that is indeed bizarre. The ghost will give you a total of 25 spears. If you play at a higher difficulty, you will be met by Bones the Skeleton instead, who will give you fewer spears to traverse to the next screen. The second screen is kind of a side-scroller. You shoot the spears up to kill all the enemies, and there's this annoying mummy with a hatchet trying to kill you. The mummy is on a pattern though, so not so hard to avoid it. It does speed up depending on the difficulty though. And so do the other enemies, which makes hitting them even harder, since some of them are pretty fast even in the lowest difficulty. The problem here is that at higher difficulties you get just enough spears to kill all the enemies and no more, so if you fail one hit, you are screwed. After killing all the enemies, you can finally kill that chopping mummy. Good riddance. The number of spears you have has no effect on anything else in the game, so don't even worry about it. On the third screen, you are finally inside the titular manor. There are no enemies here apart from a moving wall that depletes your score when it touches you until it reaches 0, which in turn means it's game over for you. So, while avoiding the wall, you must examine these coffins to find crucifixes. Honestly, I wouldn't even know they were coffins if it were not for the game's manual. And you will use these to fight against Dracula. There are 2 crucifixes in total to find, one on this screen and another one on the next screen, which is identical to this one except for the color and the room's layout. This part frustrated me so much until I finally realized that you are supposed to poke the coffins with your hand. I tried every button and nothing was working until I finally figured that out. The collision detection on the hand is not perfect though, just like the collision detection of your whole character. It's seriously infuriating to touch any wall on these 2 screens. Your character gets stuck on them, sometimes at weird angles, and you just stop moving until you move away from the wall. I would say, just keep in mind this game is old, but Haunted House came out before it and had no collision problems to speak of. Games are hard to make, man, I understand that. They were probably even harder back then. But when you have a good example of something working previously, I don't understand how these mistakes can be made. And thus, when you go up the stairs on the 4th screen, you find Dracula, who looks like a silhouette of a magician? And your caged friend. Houdini's only ability is to walk slowly in your direction, making it very hard for you to go past him. Also, if he touches you, you're done for. You must walk below David Copperfield and use the crucifixes to get him out of the way and finally save your friend. Unfortunately, and I cannot believe I'm going to say this again, something weird was going on that prevented me from using any of the crucifixes. Maybe a emulation bug? Again. Either way, that's all there is to this game, honestly.
The sound in this one is a little bit better than the previous 2 games. There's like these melodies that announce each screen. Your character's footsteps are a little bit less annoying, thankfully. But really, that's all I have to say about this one. I give Ghost Manor for the Atari 2600 2 out of 5 stars with a survival horror fan required play score of nah. Nice. The reason I don't recommend this game to the horror game enthusiasts is because I don't really consider it a horror game. Sure, there's a horror theme, but it does nothing mechanically that I would consider a survival horror, unlike the previous 2 games, which for example both had cases of exploration, puzzle solving, darkness, which is all akin to the genre. It's not bad though, I had fun for an hour, maybe a little bit more. But with that, let's go to the next game, which is
I am a pretty big fan of the Halloween movies. Well, not all of them, some of them are not good, but in general, I am a big fan of the franchise. I didn't really know what to expect of this game going in, as I somehow managed to avoid any and all information and media about it up until now. You play as a babysitter who is trying to save 1 million kids from Mr. Killerman. Seriously, neither the game nor the manual actually mentions any names. I wonder if there were any license problems with this or something like that. I'm guessing the babysitter is Laurie Strode, and of course the killer would be Austin Powers. I mean Michael Myers. And believe me, when I say 1 million kids, I really mean it. You are walking around this 2-story house with both floors represented on your screen at the same time, and you must get kids who spawn in random rooms to safety, while Austin goes around waving his knife. And by safety, I mean one of the 4 safe rooms. There's 2 on the extreme left and 2 on the extreme right. The kids never stop spawning. I hope their parents paid Laurie a lot of money. There's not much to this game, but what is there is kind of addictive and mesmerizing. I found myself playing this a lot longer than I expected. The map is a bit boring, there's nothing around, not even furniture, just empty rooms with doors connecting some of them. 2 of the rooms have flashing lights which give them a nice atmosphere, that's pretty cool. At least your character moves at a reasonable speed, so it was fast to move around and find the next kid quickly before getting bored. At any point, Michael can enter the room you are in. This guy seriously just teleports to any end of the room, and with him comes the Halloween theme music. It was really cool to hear this rendition of the song for the first few times, until it wasn't anymore. It gets annoying pretty quickly since Michael likes to spawn in almost every screen you're in, and the music stops whenever you move screens, so it's always stopping and restarting, stopping and restarting, stopping and restarting, stopping and restarting, stopping and restarting. Michael is not very fast like in the movies, so it's effortless for you to go around him, but not for the kids. Kids like to move around in the lower side of the room, don't ask me why, and they like to panic around until you grab them by pressing the fire button. They will, however, mostly stand still while Michael slowly moves towards them. And if Michael gets to them... Holy crap, this is surprisingly violent for that era. This game has literal child murder, with blood. Jesus. Not to mention that Michael literally ignores you if there's a child in the room. What a creep. Wait, what happens when Michael reaches you? Holy... Does this game have both the first child murder and the first graphic decapitation ever seen in video games? What a feat! Laurie turns into a headless chicken when Michael reaches her, and you lose one of your 3 jack-o'-lanterns, which represent your lives. Randomly, you might come across a knife, which you can use to stab Michael away from the screen. The knife is a one-use item though, so I really cannot see the advantage of using it. If Michael kills a kid, you are not penalized, just go around and find another one. Wow, that sentence was horrible. As I said, Michael is very easy to avoid, there's no reason to make him leave a screen if he's just going to reappear on the next screen.
And that's it. That's Halloween. There's not much sound apart from the Halloween theme which accompanies Michael, except for these footsteps which are not very annoying compared to previous games in this episode, and there's like a beep every time you grab a kid. I give Halloween for the Atari 2600 a 2-star out of 5, and a survival horror fan required play score of maybe. I hope you enjoy the first episode of Retro Horror Games Quest. I really enjoyed making this and playing all these old games. I am looking forward to the videos and games ahead, especially the PlayStation 1 era. That's one of my favorite horror games era. These videos take a lot longer to make than the other videos that I have on my YouTube channel, and because of that I had to change my schedule a little bit. But these videos will come every 3 weeks because, you know, I have to finish a game, I have to write a script, and I have to record, and then I have to edit. It takes a long time, and I have other videos to make, and I'm making games, and it's hard. It's so many things to do, so many things I want to do, but it's fun. So I'm not really complaining. It just, you know, every 3 weeks, not that long to wait. It's fun. And if you like what I'm doing and you want to support me, there's many ways you can do that. You can start by clicking subscribe over there. You can click the bell if you want to actually receive notifications, because YouTube is very bad at doing that without pressing the bell. Sometimes even when you press the bell. Liking and commenting on videos also is a huge help. And I also have a Patreon if you are interested in a little bit more direct support. And hey, follow me on social media and share this video. All the relevant links will be on the description. In the next video, we will look at 2 Commodore 64 games and 2 NES games spanning from 1984 to 1989. I'm excited, so thank you for getting scared with me tonight, and I hope to see you in the next episode of Retro Horror Games Quest.